Hi, I'm Imi. I'm the author of Mapping the Human Mind. This is the voice-only version. If you want to start from the beginning, I've linked the playlist at the end of this video and they are easy to find on my channel. I've been posting a chapter each week. This is chapter 3. From Marks to Memory, the Birth of Symbolic Thought. In the shadows of a dimly lit cave, an early human presses ochre pigment to stone. They've gathered in sacred spaces, participated in rituals, and honoured their dead. But now something different is happening. This moment isn't about action or ceremony. It's about preservation. This is the moment when thought becomes durable, when a belief, an idea, a memory is transformed into something that outlasts the thinker. This was the dawn of meaning-making, the moment thought became something external, something shared. Human consciousness is wired to recognise patterns, remember them and pass them on. But memory fades, and rituals vanish with the people who perform them. Symbols change that. A carved line, a painted figure, a deliberate pattern on stone. Humanity's first external memory system was born. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, approximately 75,000-year-old pieces of ochre bear deliberately engraved crosshatch patterns, abstract designs with no practical purpose other than to represent something unseen. Their meaning may be lost to us, but the intent is unmistakable, and it marks a profound distinction between ritual and representation. A burial honours the dead in the present. A symbol preserves that meaning for the future. This transition from fleeting action to lasting record allowed human meaning to extend beyond a single lifetime. Knowledge could accumulate, preserved in marks that outlasted their creators, forming the foundation for what would eventually become writing, mathematics, and all complex symbolic systems that define human civilization. In Serra de Capivara, Brazil, red ochre murals show human figures dancing, hunting, and performing ritual acts. Visual narratives generally dated between 12 to 25,000 years ago, though researchers still debate the exact age. And these weren't random markings, they were stories preserved across millennia. Long before written language, people were already capturing belief, experience, and identity on stone. In Australia, Aboriginal cultures developed intricate memory systems, songlines and rock art that anchored to ancestral stories that may reach back 40,000 years or more. Half a world away in France, the cave paintings at Chauveau, approximately 32,000 years ago, show similar complexity, not just animals but narrative compositions that suggest myth, movement and memory. These early markings were the first scaffolding of a new kind of communication. But how did a few engraved lines evolve into entire systems of meaning? What began as abstract patterns would slowly expand into full symbolic languages capable of conveying everything from myth to measurement. The shift from simple marks to complex systems of meaning didn't happen overnight. It unfolded slowly over thousands of years. By following this trail, we can see how early humans built increasingly creative ways to hold on to meaning and share it with others. Some of the earliest marks were tally lines, notches carved into bone or wood to track the passage of time, moon phases, or successful hunts. The Ishango bone, found near the Nile and dated to around 20,000 years ago, has clusters of markings that may have tracked lunar cycles. The even older Lebombo bone from South Africa, over 40,000 years old, shows similar notches, suggesting that this urge to count, to measure, to remember runs deep. These marks were humanity's first attempt to bring structure to time. They turned passing moments into something tangible, a way to remember, to plan, to notice patterns. It was a quiet revolution in how humans related to the world. Beyond tallies, simple shapes show up in caves and artifacts across continents. Long before people started drawing animals or scenes, they were already creating abstract patterns. These early designs weren't simply decoration, they meant something. Even if we've lost the key to their meaning, their presence tells us our ancestors were thinking symbolically. Alongside the engraved pieces of red ochre found at Blombos Cave, archaeologists also uncovered shell beads, carefully pierced and arranged in patterns. These 75,000-year-old ornaments likely marked identity, status, or group belonging, offering some of the earliest evidence of symbols used to structure social life. When humans began creating recognizable images of animals and people, they crossed another threshold in their symbolic journey. The magnificent bulls at La Chaux in France aren't just accurate portraits of ancient cattle. They're arranged in ways that might tell stories about migrations or breeding seasons. The paintings preserved vital knowledge about when and where to hunt. Even more powerful are the scenes found at Liang Belu Sipong Fort in Indonesia, dating back 44,000 years. The earliest known narrative scene so far discovered. Here, hunters are depicted with animal features, human-animal hybrids that speak to new ways of thinking. These weren't creatures anyone had seen in the flesh, they were imagined beings that bridged worlds, showing that early art could capture not just what eyes could see, but what minds could envision. What's fascinating is how similar patterns emerged in places separated by vast distances. Spirals, concentric circles, and zigzags appear in cultures that never met. These parallels likely reflect shared human cognition, universal perception, or perhaps something deeper still. Why do these same symbols appear independently around the world? Perhaps certain shapes naturally resonate with the human mind. The spiral emerges in Irish stone carvings, Pueblo rock art, Maori tattoos, and Chinese pottery without any cultural contact between them. The image of a great tree connecting different worlds appears as Yggdrasil in Norse stories, as Ashvata in Hindu teachings, and as the Cyber in Mayan belief. These shared symbols might spring from our common brain structure, from similar observations of the natural world, or from universal human experiences like birth, growth, and death. As symbolic thinking developed, colours too became carriers of meaning. Red connected to life and blood, black associated with death or soil, white linked to bones and spirits. These visual vocabularies helped encode abstract ideas that couldn't be directly shown. By 10,000 BCE, human communities across the world were already weaving meaning into daily life, using symbols, stories, and rituals to carry knowledge forward. These systems laid the groundwork for everything that followed, from the first writing systems to the digital symbols that fill our screens today. The distance from those first notches on bone to our modern alphabets may seem vast, but the thread connecting them is unbroken, our enduring human need to make marks that mean something. From symbols to shared myths. The embers of the fire glow as shadows dance across stone. An elder leans forward, eyes catching the light, voice steady and alive with memory. Around the circle, younger faces lean in. The story is not written, it never was, but it's known. Every beat, every turn, every pause carried through generations. This is where meaning lives, not just in marks on stone or painted walls, but in voices, gestures, and memory. This is where symbol became stories. As representational systems evolved, humans took another cognitive leap. They began weaving individual symbols into interconnected narratives. Static images transformed into living stories that could be passed from elders to children in an unbroken chain of oral tradition. A single carved spiral might represent the journey of the sun, Within a story, it became the hero's descent to the underworld and triumphant return. These oral traditions were sophisticated memory systems. By embedding practical knowledge within memorable narratives filled with vivid imagery and emotional resonance, early humans created stories that could survive the limitations of individual memory. The mythic hero's journey might contain geographical knowledge vital for migration. A tale of angry gods could encode warnings about volcanic activity, and stories of ancestral deeds preserved ethical frameworks and social bonds. The power of these narratives lay in their structure as much as their content. Oral traditions typically employ similar memory-enhancing techniques, rhythm and repetition, vivid imagery, and emotional intensity. The Vedic texts of ancient India were preserved with remarkable fidelity for thousands of years before being written down. Scholars memorized not just the words, but the precise pronunciation, meter, and intonation, creating multiple layers of pattern that reinforced accurate transmission. These recitations were more than just spoken words, they were performances that engaged all the senses. Australian Aboriginal songlines, for example, functioned as multisensory maps, blending melody, rhythm, narrative, and landscape into an integrated system of knowledge. To know the song was to know the land. To sing it was to navigate both physical terrain and spiritual heritage. Modern neuroscience is catching up to what ancient storytellers always knew. Stories stick. When information is wrapped in narrative with emotion, imagery, and rhythm, our brains are far more likely to remember it. More than cultural expression, storytelling functioned as an evolutionary strategy, helping early humans encode and transmit knowledge critical for survival. One of the most remarkable things about early mythologies is how they align. Cultures oceans apart told stories that followed the same contours, despite having never met. Great floods that cleanse the world appear from Mesopotamia to China, from Greece to indigenous America, to Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories featuring warnings, selected survivors, and recreation of the world. Divine beings who create humans from clay or earth recur across continents. The Babylonian god Marduk, the Hebrew god in Genesis, and the Mayan deity Tipu all form humans from earth. The seven sages or culture bearers appear with striking consistency worldwide. Numerous traditions tell of seven wise beings who brought knowledge, agriculture, and civilization after a catastrophe, appearing in Sumerian text, Hindu tradition, ancient Chinese records, and indigenous American stories with remarkably similar details. These stories were living institutions that structured community life. Seasonal rituals reenacted creation myths, reinforcing cosmic order. Coming-of-age ceremonies drew on mythic heroes' trials, providing templates for transformation. Agricultural cycles were synchronized with celestial myths, embedding practical knowledge within sacred narrative. These shared stories created a common understanding of the world, establishing collective worldviews that shaped identity and guided behaviour. They laid the foundation for what would become humanity's first structured models of the cosmos, mythic blueprints that made sense of existence and reflected the inner architecture of the mind. The mythic blueprint of the universe. Ancient myths weren't always primitive attempts to explain the cosmos. They were complex, symbolic frameworks for understanding existence. What's striking is how often these early intuitions mirror discoveries modern science would make thousands of years later. Across traditions, familiar patterns emerge: creation, destruction, renewal, and the deep questions every culture had to answer. Whether in ancient Mesopotamia, the rainforests of the Amazon, or the islands of Polynesia, humans everywhere ask the same fundamental questions. Where do we come from? How did the world begin? And why are we here? Across these diverse cultures, several key motifs repeat with surprising uniformity, and each finds unexpected echoes in contemporary scientific understanding. Primordial chaos. Nearly every civilization begins with a notably similar concept. Before there was a world, there was formlessness. The Mesopotamians described the waters of Tiamat, the Greeks spoke of the dark void of chaos, Egyptians named a boundless ocean called None. This intuitive grasp that order emerged from disorder mirrors modern cosmology's understanding of conditions before the Big Bang. Cosmologists describe the early universe as an undifferentiated plasma, a superheated state where familiar structures couldn't exist. The cosmic microwave background radiation discovered in 1965 shows us the afterglow of this primordial state, confirming that our ordered universe indeed emerged from a formless condition, just as the myths suggested. The Earth Diver. This pattern recurs worldwide. A creature retrieves Earth from primeval waters to create land. Native American traditions tell of diving birds bringing soil from cosmic depths. Hindu texts describe Vishnu's boar form rescuing Earth. Slavic tales feature divine beings collecting soil from beneath primordial seas. These stories parallel our scientific understanding of Earth's formation. Land literally emerging from global oceans as the planet's crust formed. Geologists now know that Earth was once entirely covered by water, with the first continental crust gradually rising above the global ocean around 2.5 billion years ago. This process continues today through plate tectonics, new land emerging from beneath the sea through volcanic activity. The Mariana Trench, Earth's most deepest point, remains a mostly unexplored abyss reminiscent of the cosmic waters described in these ancient myths. The Divine Craftsman. Creation myths frequently portray a being who shapes humanity through artistic process. Prometheus moulded humans from clay in Greek tradition. Odin carved the first people from trees in Norse tales. In Genesis, God forms Adam from dust. These accounts reflect the ordered precision in nature that we now describe through mathematics, the golden ratio in galaxies and leaf arrangements, the fine-tuning of physical constants that enables life. Biologist Darcy Thompson's landmark work on growth and form demonstrated how mathematical principles govern biological structures. The DNA molecule itself, with its elegant double helix structure and four-letter code, embodies a kind of cosmic craftsmanship. Physicist Paul Davies notes that the universe appears fine-tuned for life, with fundamental constants balanced with extraordinary precision, as if carefully calibrated by a cosmic craftsman. Cosmic sacrifice. Many traditions describe creation through divine sacrifice. Sumerian texts tell of humans formed from a slain god's blood mixed with clay. Aztec myths describe Quetzalcoatl using blood to animate ancient bones. Norse mythology formed the world from the giant Ymir's dismembered body. These accounts eerily parallel our understanding of cosmic evolution. Our bodies contain elements forged in dying stars, making us, in a sense, the blood of the universe. Astrophysicist Carl Sagan famously observed that we are made of star stuff. Every atom of carbon, oxygen and nitrogen in our bodies was created through stellar nucleosynthesis, the process by which stars fuse lighter elements into heavier ones throughout their life cycles. The iron in our blood was forged in supernovae, massive stars sacrificing themselves to seed the cosmos with the building blocks of life. Could the gods' actions have been mirrors, reflecting the ideals, fears, and social structures of those who told their stories? Did ancient people intuit these scientific truths through myth and symbol? Quantum physicist Wolfgang Pauli and psychologist Carl Jung proposed the concept of synchronicity. meaningful coincidences that suggest deeper patterns connecting mind and matter. Perhaps these mythic parallels represent what biologist E.O. Wilson calls consilience, the alignment of insights across different domains of knowledge. Myth and science may not be as separate as they appear. Both attempt to make sense of existence, find patterns in chaos, and connect human experience to larger cosmic processes. Ancient myths were humanity's first scientific theories, using narrative to explain phenomena that would later be described with equations. The convergence of mythic intuition and scientific discovery suggests something profound about human consciousness. Perhaps we are wired to recognize patterns that reflect underlying truths about existence. As physicist Werner Heisenberg observed, the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass God is waiting for you. Proto-writing and early external memory. When we think about the earliest ways humans shared meaning, the cave paintings, the spoken stories passed from one voice to the next, it becomes clear that something deeper was stirring. Eventually, our ancestors wanted a way to preserve knowledge that wouldn't vanish with memory or fade with the life of a storyteller. Long before alphabets or formal scripts, they began encoding information into durable forms, scratched into clay, carved into stone, woven into knots. These were early knowledge technologies designed to store memory outside the body. In the Middle East, small clay tokens dating back to 8000 BCE were used to represent goods like grain or livestock. Over time, people began pressing these tokens into clay tablets, shifting from physical objects to abstract impressions. It was the beginning of symbolic substitution, a leap towards writing. And this wasn't isolated. In China, Yanghao symbols appeared on tortoise shells around 6600 BCE. In Europe, the Vinca symbols emerged by 5500 BCE, showing consistency across a wide cultural area that suggests shared meaning. The Indus Valley developed a dense system of geometric symbols on seals and pottery between 3300 and 1300 BCE. We still haven't deciphered these symbols, but they clearly represent structured communication that encoded shared cultural meaning. In the Andes, the Inca created quipu, knotted cords that encoded stories, census data, and rituals in tactile three-dimensional form. This system used knots at different heights and positions in cords of various colours to create a record that could be read through touch as well as sight, demonstrating the diversity of methods humans use to externalize memory. These systems marked a turning point. They moved beyond representing specific objects to encoding structure, dates, quantities, identities, and eventually complete narratives. And wherever complexity grew, whether through trade, agriculture, or expanding settlements, so too did the pressure to systematize memory. These early forms of writing emerged independently across the globe, suggesting a natural progression, from simple marks to structured systems, as communities grew more complex. As populations expanded, oral transmission alone could no longer meet the demands of agriculture, trade, and governance. Memory had to be anchored in something more permanent. It was in Sumer around 3100 BCE that cuneiform evolved. What began as simple accounting marks developed into a full written language, capable of expressing laws, myths, prayers, and poetry. It was no longer just about preserving information, but about fixing it, standardizing it, and giving it authority. Writing restructured society. What had been dynamic, evolving through oral tradition, became codified. Stories became scripture, law became record, memory became archive. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and eventually texts like the Vedas, the Hebrew Bible, and the Iliad and Odyssey transformed from dynamic storytelling into authoritative scripture. Literacy also created gatekeepers. In Egypt, about only 1 to 2% of the population could read and write, yet hieroglyphics covered temple walls, tombs, and official decrees. Writing aligned knowledge with power, turning scribes into stewards of truth and history. What was once communal knowledge, transmitted through shared oral tradition, became specialized information controlled by literate minorities. And yet, not all cultures moved towards writing. Systems like the Yoruba Ifa divination, Australian Aboriginal song lines, and Polynesian navigation chants preserved complex knowledge orally with extraordinary precision. These were not failed steps on the road to literacy, they were alternate paths shaped by different cultural needs and environments. The legacy of early symbolic thought. The emergence of writing created something extraordinary. The capacity for knowledge to build across generations with unprecedented precision. Ideas could outlive their creators, accumulating and evolving over time. Mathematical principles, astronomical observations, medical practices. What was once fragile, dependent on memory and oral transmission, became permanent. With this permanence came new social structures. Laws could be etched into stone, unmutable and unchallengeable. The Code of Hammurabi was a declaration that law was no longer a matter of memory but of record. Governments could track taxes, enforce contract, and rule vast territories not just through force, but through the authority of the written word. Yet even as writing fixed certain aspects of myth and ritual, it also preserved stories that might otherwise have been lost to time. Through writing, the voices of ancient storytellers continue to speak to us today, bridging vast gulfs of time and cultural change. These expressive traditions, from the first intentional marks to complex writing systems, represent a fundamental aspect of human uniqueness. While other animals use signals, only humans create open-ended, symbolic systems capable of infinite recombination. This capacity isn't just one human ability among many. It's the foundation that makes all other uniquely human achievements possible. Every human innovation, from agriculture to artificial intelligence, depends on our ability to create and manipulate symbols. Without this capacity, we couldn't transmit complex knowledge across generations, develop cumulative technologies, or create the shared frameworks of meaning that bind communities together. The journey from handprints on cave walls to written epics transformed how we understand ourselves and our place in the cosmos. Through symbols, our ancestors connected across time, preserving insights beyond individual lifetimes and expanding consciousness into the realms of shared meaning. These early expressions laid the groundwork for something even more profound, the embodiment of belief, not only through marks and stories, but through movement, rhythm, and multisensory experience. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Narrative.